Hi friends, do you like 40k but don't want to play as an evil, mean bad guy? Why? That's like kind of the point. But, regardless, luckily there is one relative good guy faction in the setting. No, not them. There we go. The Farsight Enclaves are the closest thing you're gonna get to a true good guy from the main factions, other than an extremely rigid caste system that persisted after their break, and being a pretty aggressive imperialist military state. These guys are pretty clean. And in the setting literally called Warhammer, partaking in war scores you exactly 0 points in the being evil Olympics, that the other factions are constantly trying their darndest to win. But before that, I have a very important announcement. Plush Duck is live, baby! Whoa! If you want this adorable little guy, be sure to go to the makeshift link and get one. He's only going to be available for 22 days, so if you want him, be careful of that. He'd just be perfect sitting on your desk while you paint or, I don't know, watch my videos or something. Then, if you still aren't convinced, then that's me doing some ethereal brainwashing hypnosis to make you want to get a plush duck of your own, so be sure to go to that link. But anyways, without further ado, let's do a little Mont Ka and assault your mind with an unrelenting barrage of knowledge. The Farsight Enclaves is a separatist faction of the Tau, led by the legendary Tau commander Farsight. The Enclaves themselves are made up of the many worlds that Farsight reclaimed in the Damocles Gulf after the Tau's first brush with the Imperium. Which, speaking of, to explain the Farsight Enclaves, we should probably start with the titular Commander Farsight himself. Much like a mint, it just makes sense. Commander Farsight, also known as Sho, mostly because that was his name, was born on the Tau world of Vior-La. The people of Vior-La are the poster boys of the Tau Empire at the moment and are known for their aggression. This is relevant because Sho would exemplify this aggression, while not aggressive in the sense that he's constantly blasting monsters and punching walls like Lord Kyle Skulltaker might. Sho was quite hot-headed, rebellious, and from the start, he longed for battle. While in the Tau equivalent of kindergarten, Farsight was already leading classmates to try and infiltrate Fire Warrior training courses to learn the Tau way of fire. After 4 times of trying, Tau tutors noted his independence and tenacity and allowed him to begin Fire Warrior combat training 3 years earlier than was standard. And while he was schooled in the Montir battle domes, Farsight's incredible talent for battle and tactics was quickly recognized. He was the top of his cohorts both physically and mentally. He possessed a strong eidetic memory that allowed him to easily learn Tau battle tactics as well as quickly learn the tactics of the enemies he faced. In addition, he had a knack for understanding the psychology behind his enemies, which made him a very cunning warrior and a difficult tactician to face. He would graduate very quickly and was officially promoted to Fire Warrior by the legendary Puretide himself. And as a Fire Warrior, Sho would continue to show his talents. One thing to note was that many Fire Warrior tutors had a bit of a resentment towards Sho since he was generally deemed too hot-headed, too aggressive in battle, and perhaps most importantly of all, he easily completed and made all the tutors' tests seem like chump work. So, that in combination with general jealousy meant that Shovo was sent to the most violent war zones in order to truly test his mettle and to either prove himself a true prodigy or to knock him down a peg. But let me tell you, buddy, Fartsight doesn't go down pegs. He goes up to the face of his enemies and blasts them, that is. As a Fire Warrior, Sho first fought a scary spider race, and although he wasn't an officer yet, Farsight's suggestions would be invaluable in eventually destroying the arachnid Arakan. And beginning here in the Battle of the Great Web, Sho would be recommended for his first in a long series of trials by fire to be promoted in the Tau ranks. And for the Trials of Fire, in my notes I just wrote, they keep gaslight traumatizing him like those evil TikTok girlies testing their boyfriend's loyalty. You see, these trials by fire were essentially elaborate tests of loyalty to ensure Fire Warriors were dedicated paragons of the greater good before moving up the Tau ranks. They're essentially simulations that feel just like reality to the aspirant in the moment, which the aspirant is put into dire situations to test their loyalty and resolve in battle. Those who failed are seemingly killed, and those who succeed are traumatized for life. But again, Farsight is him, so outside of some mental trauma, he was totally fine. Plus, what's a little mental trauma compared to the privilege to pilot a badass mech suit? Then, after his trial of fire, Sho was made a Sashui and assigned a broadside battlesuit. Since Sho liked close combat a little too much, he would be given the long-range broadside to temper his aggression. Eventually, though, he would be given his favorite, the XV8 crisis suit. You're a Tau, but you don't like ranged combat? Why? That's like kind of the point. Anyways, though, with this crisis suit, he led an assault to kill the Acheron leaders and finish the fight. However, after this battle, on his way off-world, the ship that Sho was on would be infested with an Acheron swarm, and he sacrificed himself to save his commander and the Ethereals on board. But fear not, Farsight fans. Thanks to the incredible power of lying, Tau High Command revealed that the whole getting eaten alive by little evil-ass spider babies was all a simulation and a test to see how loyal and how dedicated Sho was to the greater good. And turns out, letting yourself get eaten alive by spiders to protect your boss is pretty impressive, so he got the privilege of training under the legendary Commander Puretide. Under Puretide, Sho trained alongside Shadow Sun and Kai's, and he would become a master of all aspects of Tau warfare, but especially the art of Mont Ka. And his training would be put to the test in the Arkunasha War. On the world of Arkunasha, the Tau would have their first contact with the Orcs and would be completely overwhelmed by a surprise attack that left them outnumbered 400 to 1. However, despite being severely outnumbered and fighting an enemy radically different from anything the Tau have experienced before, Sho, who is now called Oshava since he was a commander, innovated a number of tactics to combat the Orcs and used his talents to learn all about the Green Tide. He used the good old Halo tactic of killing elites to make the grunts scramble on the Orcs, since he noticed when a war boss or boss knob was killed, the Orcs would fight each other in a bid to be the new leader. So he would lead strike teams to snipe Orc leaders. Another tactic he used was literally Bilbo Baggins rage baiting the Orcs into fighting each other by playing clipped lines of Orcish insults within squads. And finally, he had the bright idea of actually going on the offensive rather than waiting for the Orcs to come and kill them. In addition, he had the other bright idea of, oh hey, why don't we just shoot the shit out of them even if they're close up? These tactics began to turn the tide of the war and would earn Oshava the title of Farsight due to his deep understanding of his enemy. Which is fortunate, because I'm tired of saying his dumb stupid Tau name. Farsight would even pen a book on his findings on Orc culture and tactics called the Book of the Beast. This would be passed along to Fire Warriors on-world and taught them valuable tactics to fight the Greenskins, essential behaviors of the Orcs, and even some basic Orc language. Despite the newfound success, the war was still far from over, and Farsight would ask the Ethereals for reinforcements. To which, they sent a single Manta with a single Ethereal, who ordered Farsight to abandon the world and come fight in a new war, the Damocles Crusade. So, on the verge of a breakthrough, Farsight begrudgingly evacuated his forces from the world. This was among the first instances that would sow the seeds of doubt within Farsight, and he began to question the Ethereals' leadership and callousness. But, nevertheless, he fought in Damocles and led the successful Tau defensive along with Shadow Sun. And then after his successes, Farsight was put in charge of a huge propaganda reclamation expedition in order to bolster Tau morale and reclaim worlds lost to the Imperium in the Damocles Gulf. Farsight commanded the largest Tau fleet ever assembled at the time, and he went absolutely insano style, reclaiming worlds in the aptly named Farsight Expedition. And as he approached the final world to complete the crusade, he heard word of Orc presence in the area. And despite being so close to completing his assignment, he couldn't help but go on a little Orc killing trip, which, honestly, that's valid, considering that even a few Orcs can grow exponentially into a little thing called a big fucking problem. But the Ethereals didn't see it this way. Farsight not only left on the brink of total victory, but he was also the first Tau to ever disobey a direct order from an Ethereal. And so, Farsight waged a huge war with the Orcs that ended up spanning across most of the worlds they just reclaimed. And when things seemed their most hopeless, Farsight meditated deep in the oceans of Vior Lost, and he realized that he could use the planets themselves to cleanse the Orc hordes. And so, Farsight, like a total badass madman, went across the Enclave planets, causing natural disasters across the globes to purge the Orcs en masse. He created vast wildfires by incinerating the forest of Vior Lost, he ignited the atmosphere of Tink La, created huge tsunamis on Salash Say, and caused planet-wide earthquakes on Loeb Gral. And these attacks were honestly some of the most, if not the most, insane and daring plans in 40k. But they were as effective as they were nutty, and the Orcs were nearly completely eradicated by Farsight's artificial catastrophes. The final Orcs went on to rally on the world of Arthas Moloch, and Farsight followed them to end their wall once and for all. And on this fateful world, as Farsight and his forces killed the orcs in battle, a strange portal appeared and outpoured strange creatures that ravaged orcs and Tau alike. This would be the first time the Tau came in contact with the horrific demon legions of chaos. In the ensuing war, Tau would take heavy casualties, but Farsight would be able to turn the tide after realizing his opponents needed blood to survive and by inadvertently using anti-chaos wards on a mysterious sword that he found. In the aftermath of the demonic incursion, it was discovered that all of the Ethereals in Farsight's fleet had been slain. As the Enclaves regrouped after their war with the Orcs and the mysterious Molochites, Farsight would reflect on his brush with chaos as well as the Ethereals. Heresies festered in his mind as he began to question the Ethereals' true nature, and in retrospect, and without the Ethereals in proximity, Farsight began to realize just how sinister that these majestic blue dudes really were. Beyond being pretty callous and quick to war crime, the Ethereals also had an unnatural influence over their Tau inferiors. In retrospect, things that once seemed necessary and justified now appeared needlessly cruel in Farsight's farsighted eyes. Furthermore, without Ethereals, the Tau of the Enclaves were functioning perfectly well. All this made Farsight realize that the Ethereals had lied to the species and were not as necessary as they asserted. But Farsight had the foresight to know that such a revolution would shake the Tau species to its core and in all likelihood cause a schism that would bring them to ruin. So, rather than collapse society and potentially doom his species, Farsight decided that if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. And he left his battlesuit and mysterious sword to his bestie Ovesa and went into self-imposed exile. Farsight assumed that he would just die of old age in exile, but for some reason he hardly aged at all. And in his time, he would meditate and face his feelings. Meanwhile, the rest of the Tau Empire assumed Farsight and the Tau and the Farsight Enclaves had perished since they had no word from the Ethereals in the fleet. But then, decades later, they discovered the worlds of the Farsight Enclaves were etherealist and thriving. This made Tau Supreme Leader Anva incredibly mad, and he erased nearly all memory of Farsight's heroics. Monuments were torn down, stories of his heroics were banned, and images depicting Farsight's victories had the commander photoshopped out Stalin style. The only surviving monument was on Farsight's birth world of Vior Law, and it would be made a reminder of the importance of following the Ethereal's guidance. But the Ethereals being mad at them would soon be the least of their worries when Tyrannid Hive crack and attacked the Enclaves. Seeing the dire threat that his world faced, Farsight returned and requested his battlesuit and sword to fight once more. Using a self-replicating poison that Ovesa and the other Earthcast scientists made, Farsight was able to exterminate the bugs in a cunning gambit. And being inspired by the Earthcast heroics, Farsight decided to return to society and take on the mantle of leadership for the Farsight Enclaves. Along with his 7 besties, Farsight would lead the Enclaves in a group known as the Eight. Despite breaking from the Empire, Farsight would still mostly follow the philosophy of the greater good, just without the corruption of the Ethereals. He also rigidly enforces the caste system, arguably even more so than the regular Tau Empire. Farsight primarily fights to protect his people, but has also been expanding his little empire. The Enclaves primarily fight orcs and Tyrannids, but of course fight the other factions too. Notably, they have both fought against and alongside the main Tau Empire, depending on circumstances. In battle, the force of the Farsight Enclaves tend to favor Mont-Ka and more aggressive tactics like their leader Farsight. Their primary military doctrines are built around teams of XV-8 crisis suits that specialize in rapid insertions and devastating firepower. These teams emulate Farsight's ability to understand his enemies and strike them in their most vulnerable points. Then, after a powerful strike, the weakened enemies are often gunned down by ranged support cadres. The battlesuit pilots of the Farsight Enclaves are among the most skilled and fearsome Tau in the entire galaxy. But with that, that's about it for the Farsight Enclaves. They're really cool and are definitely my favorite Tau faction. As you may know, I'm a big dumb lame-o who likes nicer characters, so even though he's not spotless, Farsight is definitely up my alley. Also, Farsight's just a total badass anyways. My favorite moment of his was his little artificial natural disaster stunt, but he also has a lot of cool moments in Arcs of Omen and other things that you should read about. As for their good guy status, to me it kind of feels that the Tau and the Farsight Enclaves have had opposite treatments, as in GW's been trying to make the Tau more overtly evil and has been trying to make Farsight more overtly good. At first, both of these factions were relatively morally gray, leaning towards bad, which in 40k is Superman levels of good, but in most other settings they'd both be bad. But throughout the years they've been nudging them in opposite directions. But let me know what you think about it. Also, big red guys descending from the skies to absolutely slaughter whatever poor sod decided to exist that day. Farsight having a vampire blade, and them constantly friend zoning corn. Holy greater good, the Farsight Empires are literally Tau blood angels. But, anyways, let me know what you think about the Farsight Enclaves in the comments below, and whether or not you like them or the regular Tau more. I definitely want to cover more Tau characters in the future. The 8 are cool, and I just recently learned how cool Wei is. Also, don't forget to check out Plush Duck in the makeshift link below. He's super adorable and awesome, and he would be a great little desk toy or gaming companion. I don't know. I've been bringing him to all my tabletop games recently, so maybe you could do that too. Anyways, thank you for watching, and thank you to all my awesome patrons. You're all very epic. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your Farsight buddies. Thanks. I hated recording this video. All these stupid fucking Tau names are so hard to say, and for some reason my tongue just does not like the word ethereal.